The observation vessel Celestial Whisper hung in the darkness of space, its crystalline hull refracting starlight as it maintained its position just beyond Mars' orbit. High Commander Zixtal stood before the ship's panoramic viewing chamber, his iridescent scales shifting from deep blue to violet as he processed the data streaming in from Earth. "Most peculiar," he muttered, his secondary brain clusters working overtime to make sense of the readings. "They've mastered nuclear fusion, achieved quantum computing, and yet—" He gestured to his senior analyst, Venra, who approached with a cascade of holographic displays. "They appear to have no orbital defense grid, High Commander," Venra reported, her scales showing patterns of confusion. "No weapon platforms, no energy shields protecting their major cities. Their military vessels are primitive by Council standards. The Galactic Council had discovered Earth 6 months ago, and since then, their stealth vessels had been conducting thorough observations of human civilization. The Council, a confederation of the galaxy's most advanced species, had protocols for integrating new civilizations. But humans were breaking all their models. "Look at this," Zixtal commanded, bringing up a new hologram. "Their scientific advancement curve is unlike anything we've seen. They went from primitive combustion engines to quantum computers in less than 2 centuries, yet they've devoted minimal resources to military development." The Council's initial assessment had classified humans as a Category 3 civilization, technologically advanced enough to achieve spaceflight, but not yet ready for full galactic integration. However, their scientific achievements suggested Category 1 capabilities, while their military technology seemed barely Category 4. "Perhaps they're simply peaceful," Venra suggested, but her tone carried doubt. No species had ever achieved such technological advancement without developing corresponding military capability. It was a fundamental law of evolution. Survival required strength. The High Commander's decision to initiate first contact came 3 days later, after a curious discovery. Human satellites had begun exhibiting quantum entanglement signatures that shouldn't have been possible with their observed level of technology. Either they were hiding their true capabilities, or they had achieved something revolutionary. The Council's contact fleet emerged from hyperspace in a carefully choreographed display, their ships arranged in the traditional formation of peaceful intent, a spiral pattern that any spacefaring race would recognize as non-threatening. They positioned themselves just beyond lunar orbit, broadcasting the universal greeting on all frequencies. The human response was not what they expected. Instead of panic or awe, a single transmission came from a facility in Geneva. "Welcome to Sol System," a calm voice announced in perfect galactic standard. "We've been expecting you." Zixtal's scales flickered in shock. "How are they broadcasting in standard?" he demanded. "Our linguistics teams haven't even begun the translation protocols." The answer came in the form of a holographic projection that materialized on the Celestial Whisper's bridge. A human woman stood before them, her dark skin contrasting with the white uniform she wore. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief of Sinological Relations, smiled warmly. "We've been studying your communication patterns since you entered our system 6 months ago," she explained. "Your encryption was quite elegant, but quantum entanglement works both ways. Once we detected your observation vessels, it was simply a matter of time before we decoded your language." The implications hit Zixtal like a gravitational wave. The humans hadn't just detected their stealth vessels, they had been using them as unwitting teachers, learning from the very ships sent to study them. "You've been aware of us this entire time?" he managed to ask. "Of course," Dr. Chen replied. "We could have blocked your observations, but we saw an opportunity for peaceful first contact. Your council has a reputation for being thorough in its assessment of new species. We respected that." As the conversation continued, Zixtal began to understand the fundamental error in their assessment. They had mistaken humanity's lack of visible military infrastructure for weakness. But as Dr. Chen explained their philosophy, a different picture emerged. "We learned long ago that the most effective defense isn't always the most visible," she said. Your scans showed you what we wanted you to see. You were looking for weapon platforms and energy shields, so you missed the quantum field manipulators integrated into our orbital satellites. You searched for military vessels but overlooked our gravity well generators. The High Commander's scales had shifted to a deep purple of respect and concern. Why reveal this now? Because true peaceful cooperation can only begin with honest understanding, Dr. Chen answered. We don't demonstrate our strength to threaten, but to ensure that our future relationships are built on mutual respect rather than misunderstanding. As the first official meetings between human and council representatives began, Zixtal found himself reviewing the council's first contact protocols. They had always assumed that technological advancement and military development went hand in hand. Humans had shown them a different path, one where advancement could be achieved through innovation rather than competition, where strength could be hidden behind wisdom rather than displayed through force. The council had indeed made a mistake, but not the one they initially feared. They hadn't underestimated humanity's military capability. They had underestimated their ingenuity. The humans hadn't abandoned military development. They had revolutionized it in ways the council hadn't imagined possible. As Zixtal prepared his report for the council, he included a new recommendation. Upgrade humanity's classification to Category 1 with a special notation. Approach with respect. Their greatest weapons are the ones you'll never see coming. The silent shield. Not everyone in the galaxy welcomed the news of humanity's advancement with the same diplomatic grace as the Council. The Crax Imperium, in particular, saw Earth's revelation as a challenge to their military supremacy. Fleet Commander Vorkath stood aboard the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, his chitinous armor gleaming under the harsh light of tactical displays. Their defenses are a bluff, he declared to his war council. No species can advance so far without visible military infrastructure. The council has been deceived by clever diplomacy and false demonstrations. The Crax battle fleet assembled at the edge of Sol's system comprised 300 warships, each bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. They had chosen their moment carefully, when Earth's orbital position put it furthest from its powerful allies in the Council. Begin the approach, Vorkath commanded. Let's see how these humans handle real military might. In her office at Luna Command, Admiral Helena Santos watched the Crax fleet's approach with serene composure. The quantum sensors had detected their assembly long before they entered the system, and Earth's defense grid had been quietly preparing for this inevitable test of strength. They're proceeding exactly as anticipated, she noted to her staff. Tactical analysis. Dr. Marcus Wong, head of defensive systems, pulled up a holographic display of the approaching fleet. Their formation suggests they expect traditional resistance. Energy shields, counterfire, perhaps some form of planetary defense system. They're completely unaware of the silence. The silence was humanity's masterpiece of defensive engineering. Not a shield or weapon in any traditional sense, but something far more sophisticated. As the Crax fleet crossed the designated threshold, they were about to discover why Earth had never needed visible defenses. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Crax's long-range scanners began returning contradictory readings. Their target, Earth, seemed to shift position slightly with each scan, as though the planet itself was dancing through space-time. Sensor malfunction, Vorkath's technical officer reported, mandibles clicking in frustration. The humans are attempting some form of electronic warfare. But this was no mere jamming or deception. The silence worked by manipulating the quantum fabric of space itself, creating a field of probabilistic uncertainty around Earth. Every targeting system, every navigational plot, every attempt to fix the planet's position resulted in slightly different coordinates. As the Crax fleet pressed forward, their sophisticated targeting computers began to fail. Weapon systems reported multiple possible locations for their targets, none of which quite matched reality. Ships' navigational systems struggled to maintain formation as space itself seemed to become uncertain around them. Impossible, Vorkath growled as his flagship's systems reported dozens of conflicting positions for a single Earth defense satellite. No technology can affect space itself at this scale. Admiral Santos allowed herself a small smile as she watched the Krax fleet's formation begin to deteriorate. "That's the beauty of the silence," she explained to her staff. "It doesn't stop attacks. It makes them mathematically impossible. You cannot hit what you cannot definitively locate in space-time." The Krax commander, growing desperate, ordered his fleet to launch a full barrage despite the targeting issues. Thousands of plasma torpedoes and energy beams lanced out toward where their systems insisted Earth should be. Every single shot missed, their trajectories bent by the quantum uncertainty field until they passed harmlessly into space. "Perhaps now would be a good time to demonstrate our own capabilities," Dr. Wong suggested. Admiral Santos nodded and, with a simple command, activated Earth's countermeasure systems. Hundreds of small, autonomous platforms emerged from their quantum-cloaked positions around the planet. Unlike traditional weapon platforms, these devices operated in perfect harmony with the silence, their own positions precisely calibrated to the fluctuating quantum field. The Krax fleet found themselves surrounded by weapons they couldn't target, couldn't track, and couldn't predict. Each platform could strike with perfect accuracy through the silence, while remaining virtually impossible to hit in return. "Your demonstration of force has been noted," Admiral Santos transmitted to the Krax flagship. "We would prefer to resolve this peacefully, but we are prepared to demonstrate exactly why visible weapons platforms are obsolete in modern warfare." To emphasize her point, one of Earth's platforms fired a precisely calculated shot that passed through the quantum field distortions to disable the Eternal Conquest's main drive. A demonstration of surgical precision that would have been impossible with traditional targeting systems. Vorkath, watching his mighty fleet rendered impotent by an enemy they couldn't even properly detect, finally understood the true meaning of advanced military technology. The humans hadn't abandoned defense. They had transcended it. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of revelation. "Request diplomatic channel with Earth Command." As the Krax fleet retreated under escort from Earth's defense platforms, Admiral Santos updated the standard warning buoy at the system's edge. "Sol system is protected by the silence. Those who come in peace will find a warm welcome. Those who come for war will find only frustration." The message spread quickly through the galaxy. Earth didn't need visible defenses because they had rendered traditional warfare obsolete. The silence stood as a testament to humanity's different approach to survival among the stars, not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of the universe itself. The mind game. The Nexus Collective watched Earth's triumph over the Krax with great interest. Unlike the brutish Krax or the Diplomatic Council, the Collective specialized in something far more subtle: psychic warfare. Their consciousness-linked hivemund had subjugated dozens of species through mental domination, and they saw humanity's impressive technology as irrelevant against their telepathic powers. "Physical defenses mean nothing to us," Overmind Exers communicated to the assembled collective. "Their quantum fields cannot shield their thoughts. We will turn their own minds against them." The collective's psychic assault began not with ships or weapons, but with dreams. Across Earth, people began experiencing strange nightmares, subtle suggestions, and creeping paranoia. The collective expected their usual pattern of success: confusion leading to fear, fear leading to chaos, chaos leading to submission. But something was different this time. Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's Director of Cognitive Defense, stood before the Global Security Council, her expression thoughtful as she reviewed the latest neural activity data. "The collective's attack isn't failing because it's not reaching us," she explained. "It's failing because they fundamentally misunderstand human consciousness." The collective had encountered countless species across the galaxy, but humans were unique. Unlike other races whose minds evolved in relative isolation, human consciousness had been shaped by millennia of social interaction, complex language, and most importantly, storytelling. They're attempting to infiltrate our minds with fear and confusion. Dr. Patel continued, but humanity has been inoculated against such manipulation through centuries of literature, media, and shared narratives. We've imagined every possible horror, explored every fear through art and story. Their psychological weapons are hitting minds pre-vaccinated by everything from ancient mythology to modern science fiction. In the vast network of the collective consciousness, overmind exers became aware of something unprecedented. Instead of finding minds ripe for manipulation, they encountered psyches fortified by generations of imaginative exploration. Every attempted intrusion was met with recognition, analysis, and often curiosity rather than fear. The collective's telepathic probes encountered humans who had already explored the concept of mind control through countless stories, who had mentally role-played resistance to psychological manipulation, who had developed complex emotional and intellectual frameworks for dealing with the unknown. But the true surprise came when the humans began to respond. We've been studying their telepathic signatures, Dr. Patel revealed, activating a holographic display of neural patterns. Their hive mind technology is impressive, but it's based on a fundamental principle we discovered decades ago: quantum entanglement of consciousness. We just never saw the need to weaponize it. Until now. Earth's counteroffensive didn't target the collective with fear or confusion. Instead, they began broadcasting something the hive mind had never encountered: empathy, understanding, acceptance, the accumulated wisdom of human philosophy, the collective weight of human artistic expression, the profound depths of human emotional experience, all focused and transmitted directly into the collective consciousness. The effect was devastating. The hive mind, designed to impose its will on others, had no defense against genuine connection. Individual members of the collective began experiencing something they had never known: true individuality, sparked by exposure to human concepts of personal identity and self-determination. Their hive mind is fracturing, Dr. Patel reported, watching the neural patterns shift and fragment. Not through destruction, but through awakening. They're discovering individual consciousness. In a desperate attempt to maintain control, overmind exers tried to sever the connection with human minds, only to find that the exposure had already catalyzed irreversible changes in the collective. Members began emerging as distinct personalities, their thoughts colored by human concepts of freedom, creativity, and individual worth. "We don't wish to destroy you," Dr. Patel transmitted to the fragmenting collective. "We want to share with you what we've learned through our long journey of consciousness, that true strength comes not from domination, but from diversity. Not from control, but from choice." The collective's invasion ended not with a surrender, but with an awakening. What emerged from the hive mind was not a defeated enemy, but a transformed civilization, one that had discovered the power of individual thought and emotional connection through their attempt to subjugate humanity. In the aftermath, as the newly individualized members of the former collective began exploring their newfound identities, the galactic community was forced to recognize yet another unique aspect of human power. They had demonstrated that their greatest strength lay not in their technology or their defenses, but in the richness of their inner lives, the complexity of thought and emotion that centuries of cultural evolution had produced. The last resort. The amalgamation watched Earth's successive victories with growing desperation. An alliance of militant species who saw humanity's rise as an existential threat, they had spent years preparing for what they called the final solution. Their combined fleet of over 10,000 warships represented the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy's history. Grand Marshal Kivoth, Supreme Commander of the Amalgamation Forces, stood before the assembled War Council. Humanity has defeated conventional warfare through their silence. They have overcome psychic assault through their mental resilience, but they cannot stand against the combined might of half the galaxy. The attack plan was comprehensive. Simultaneous strikes from multiple vectors, overwhelming force applied to every human colony and outpost, a full-spectrum assault designed to overwhelm any possible defense through sheer numbers. On Earth, the Global Defense Council received the intelligence about the impending attack with remarkable calm. Admiral Helena Santos and Dr. Maya Patel had been joined by Dr. James Chen, Earth's Chief of Strategic Operations, as they reviewed the threat assessment. "They still don't understand," Dr. Chen remarked, studying the holographic display of the approaching armada. "Even after everything, they think this is about military power." The amalgamation fleet arrived with devastating synchronization, emerging from hyperspace at precisely calculated points around every human-controlled world. They expected to find planets cowering behind their quantum shields, preparing for a desperate defense. Instead, they found nothing. Every human world, every station, every outpost, simply gone. Where Earth should have been, where Mars colonies should have stood, where humanity's presence should have been detected. Empty space. Impossible. Kvoth raged as the reports flooded in. They can't have evacuated an entire civilization. Where are they? The answer came in the form of a transmission that somehow reached every ship in the amalgamation fleet simultaneously, bypassing all communication protocols and security measures. Dr. Chen's holographic image appeared on every bridge, in every command center. "We call it the Exodus Protocol," he explained calmly. "You thought our silence was impressive. That was just a localized manipulation of space-time. This is something far more ambitious." As he spoke, the truth of humanity's greatest achievement became clear. They hadn't evacuated their worlds. They had shifted them ever so slightly out of phase with normal space-time, existing in a parallel dimensional frequency that the amalgamation's sensors couldn't detect. "Your entire fleet is currently surrounded by every human world and outpost," Dr. Chen continued. "We're literally right next to you, just a quantum shift away. Every one of your ships is within range of every weapon we possess, every defense system we've built. You just can't see us." To demonstrate, a single human defense platform shifted back into normal spacetime directly alongside the amalgamation flagship. Before their sensors could even register its presence, it shifted away again, leaving behind a small gift: a quantum-locked data crystal containing the complete technical specifications of the Exodus Protocol. "This is why we never focused on traditional military technology," Dr. Chen explained. "While other species built bigger ships and stronger weapons, we learned to step outside the battlefield entirely. We don't need to defeat you in combat. We simply choose not to be where you can reach us until we decide otherwise." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just developed a defensive technology, they had mastered the ability to opt out of warfare entirely. The amalgamation fleet, for all its overwhelming force, was effectively powerless against an enemy that could choose whether to exist in the same spacetime as their weapons. "We're transmitting these specifications to demonstrate two things," Dr. Chen continued. "First, that we could have shared this technology long ago, but chose not to because we weren't certain it would be used wisely. And second, to show you that even now, faced with what you intended to be our extinction, we choose cooperation over conflict." The data crystal contained not just the technical details of the Exodus Protocol, but also an invitation, an offer to join humanity in exploring the true frontiers of science and civilization, to move beyond the paradigm of military power and into an age of universal discovery. A new dawn. 5 years after the failed amalgamation assault, the Great Hall of the Galactic Concordat, formerly the Council Chambers, buzzed with activity. Representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for what many considered the most significant diplomatic event in galactic history. The massive chamber, redesigned to accommodate species of all forms and sizes, reflected humanity's influence on galactic architecture. Elegant efficiency rather than imposing grandeur. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now serving as Earth's primary representative to the Concordat, stood at the central podium. Beside her, former Grand Marshal Kvoth, his once militant bearing softened by years of collaborative research, prepared to address the assembly. 5 years ago, I commanded the largest military force ever assembled. Kvoth began, his voice carrying across the chamber. We came to conquer humanity. Instead, humanity conquered our understanding of what was possible. The implementation of the Exodus Protocol had done more than prevent a war. It had sparked a revolution in galactic thinking. The ability to shift between dimensional frequencies had opened up vast new frontiers for expansion, solving resource conflicts that had driven military competition for centuries. We thought humanity's reluctance to develop traditional military power was a weakness. Kvoth continued. We didn't understand that they had simply asked different questions. While we asked, how do we win wars? They asked, how do we make wars unnecessary? Dr. James Chen, now leading the Concordat Scientific Exchange Program, brought up a holographic display showing the network of quantum-linked research stations that now spanned the galaxy. These facilities, existing in overlapping dimensional frequencies, allowed civilizations to share knowledge and resources without territorial conflicts. The Exodus Protocol was never meant to be just a defensive technology, Dr. Chen explained to the assembly. It was the key to understanding that space itself, like knowledge, like progress, isn't a zero-sum game. There is always another layer, another dimension, another way forward. The changes went beyond technology. The transformed members of the former Nexus Collective had become invaluable interpreters of consciousness, helping species understand each other on previously impossible levels. The Crax Imperium's military expertise had been redirected toward exploring and mapping dimensional frequencies. Even the amalgamation's vast industrial capacity had been repurposed for scientific advancement rather than warfare. But perhaps the most profound change, Ambassador Chen observed, has been in how we view strength itself. She gestured to the assembled representatives, former enemies now working together, militant species now leading peaceful scientific expeditions, isolationist civilizations now eagerly participating in cultural exchanges. Humanity didn't survive because we were stronger, she continued. We survived because we refused to accept that strength could only be measured in military might. We thrived because we understood that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to find alternatives to destruction. The assembly chamber's quantum field generators hummed softly as she spoke, keeping the vast space slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, a constant reminder of how perspective could change reality. The technology that had once been humanity's greatest defense was now the foundation of a new galactic society. We stand today not as conquerors or conquered, Ambassador Chen concluded, but as pioneers. The question before us is no longer how do we protect ourselves from each other, but what will we discover together? As she finished speaking, the chamber's dimensional frequency shifted slightly, revealing the Earth hanging in space behind her, not as a hologram, but through a direct quantum window. The cradle of humanity, once dismissed as an undefended target, now stood as a symbol of a fundamentally new approach to civilization. The Galactic Concordat ratified its new charter that day, establishing principles that would have seemed impossible just years before. Military power was no longer the measure of a species' status. The ability to wage war was no longer the mark of advancement. Instead, contribution to the collective knowledge and welfare of all species became the new standard of civilization. In the end, humanity's greatest victory hadn't come from outsmarting their enemies or developing superior weapons. It had come from showing the galaxy a different path, one where innovation, empathy, and collaboration proved more powerful than any fleet or weapon ever created. As the assembled representatives filed out of the chamber, many paused to look back at the quantum window showing Earth, the planet that had taught the galaxy its most important lesson. True strength lies not in the power to win wars, but in the wisdom to transcend them entirely.